Welcome to yet another video wherein we are going to build an innovative project. So the project that we are going to build is an research assistant with the help of Spring Boot and some knowledge of front end, wherein we are going to build an extension for ourselves. So let me quickly demonstrate the power of this project. Okay, let me quickly give you a demo over here. So I already have my backend server up and running. And here I am on this official website of Spring Framework documentation. Okay, this is the official website of Spring, as you can see in the browser. Now here you can see this article. This article is fairly long and I'm doing some sort of research, let's say, and I don't have time to go through this long article. So I want somebody to summarize this article for me. So that is what our research assistant is going to do for you. Okay, so here you can see this extension with the icon R. Just click over here and you will see this extension come up. Okay, so this extension has two features right now. One is summarizing the articles for you, and you can also take notes in the browser itself. Now here I've already taken some notes and you're seeing those notes come up over here. Okay, so if you launch the application for the first time, it's likely like you will see this text box empty. But I've already taken some notes, so that is why I'm seeing this over here. Okay, now how do you summarize? So here you can select the text that you want to summarize. So I'll select this entire piece of text, this entire couple of pages I've selected. I'll hit the summarize button. Now, the moment I say summarize, you can see what has happened is with the help of backend. Okay, so this extension is communicating with the backend that is running on my local machine, and backend server is interacting with the remote AI model that exists, and it is giving us this output. Now, from this output, you can take whatever notes you want. Okay, any sort of notes. So let's say I want to copy this. Okay, you can copy this over here and you can say save. Okay, you can see note saved successfully. Now, if you come to this page later on, or if I close the extension and if I go to some other page and if I click on this, you will see the notes being there. So these notes are there. We are making use of local storage over here, wherein we are storing the notes onto local machine. We'll be learning all of that in this particular course. Okay, so yeah, this is an amazing project. I believe it's a research assistant. You can improvise on this. You can take the knowledge that you have gained in this class to the next level, and you can improve this extension. For example, you can add a button for citations. Whenever you're doing any sort of research work, citations are important. So you can add a button for that. Okay, there are tons of functionality that you can think of, and since you would know how to make use of AI, how to make use of backend, how to build an extension, possibilities are endless. Okay, so my job is to show you the path, and you can take it forward wherever you wish to. Right? So yeah, this is amazing. You can go to any sort of website and make use of this research assistant. If you don't select any sort of text, and if you say summarize, there is a validation. It will say, please select some text first. Okay, so be sure to select text. I could have done this without selection also. Okay, so without user selecting, we can summarize the entire web page. But some web pages are super long and user might not want to summarize everything. So that is why I've given this functionality of selecting the text. That's the reason, if you ask me. Okay, so this is an amazing project for you to build, and yes, you can add this to your portfolio as well. Okay, you can impress the interviewer with this project that you have built. This is very unique. Nobody has ever taught how you can build this kind of projects that I'm bringing, and these are very unique projects on YouTube itself. So on this entire platform, you won't find this kind of a project on any of the channels. If you see this, okay, it's likely that video has been uploaded after this one. Okay, so they've seen this video and then they've uploaded it on their channel as well. But this is the most unique project that is not available anywhere. So add it to your resume. It's innovative as well to impress the interviewer. You can add more buttons over here, more functionalities. I show you all of that, how you can do that. Okay, so you can take this knowledge and take it to the next level. Also, if you're liking this kind of videos, if you're liking building this kind of projects, then feel free to check out my courses on Spring Boot. Okay, so you can see over here, this is one of the best sellers on Udemy with 4.7 stars of rating. it has around 90 hours of content. So it says over here 70 plus hours. Okay, but I have added 20 more hours of content recently, which covers things like payment gateway integration with Stripe, order management, cart management, Redux, React Basics, React Advanced, all of this. So it is a complete full stack course. We learn about AI integration as well in this. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are covered. Okay, and you also get access to 6 months of IntelliJ. Okay, and you can click on this button to get a coupon code exclusively for my viewers. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Spring, you can check out all the courses. So this course is another course where we talk about Spring security in depth. Okay, we build a full stack application which is highly secure, and we implement all the security related features. There is a course on microservices as well. There's a course on Java as well. And there are tons of courses that I have already which are doing well. Now, all these courses are available in Udemy for Business. So if you have a company's business account, you can enroll in these courses for free via Udemy for Business program. So that is one more thing. You don't have to pay if you have a company's Udemy for Business subscription. Okay, that is something that I wanted to highlight. Also, if you're liking my work, if you're liking, so these kind of projects that I'm bringing on this platform takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. If you're liking my work, and this is all, everything that you're seeing over here is unique. Okay, no one will show you how you can build these kind of projects. Okay, we not only talk about what, why, we also talk about hows, right? And I go very step by step in a very detail oriented manner. So if you're liking this content, liking these kind of projects, then please support the work. Please subscribe, like, share this amongst your friends who are working in an organization and are looking to improve on Java development skills. Now, this particular project, I would want to tell you, like, this research assistant project is not only just for beginners. It is also for intermediate developers and also for people who are already doing or working as a Spring Boot developer. So if you are an advanced level developer, this project is still for you. I'll tell you why. Because, you are not going to work in a single organization for your life. You're going to make a switch. And whenever you make a switch, yes, apart from your work experience that you already have, it's useful to make your resume stand out. And that is where these kind of projects come into picture. So you can show interviewer what you have done on your own apart from your work. And that shows that you are very much interested into development and you have the knowledge and the skills to build amazing products. So you can talk about like these kind of projects that you have done apart from the projects that you have built in your day job. Okay, so this will add on to your resume and it will impress the interviewer a lot that, hey, this person has not only worked in his day job, he has built these kind of projects in his day job for his company, but he also has a personal portfolio. So that's impressive. And it helps you make your resume stand out. That's what I would say. Okay, so without a further ado, let's jump right in and let's talk about everything. And I want to show you the code base as well. So this is the extension that we'll build. I'll show you why we are creating these files, why every file matters and what every file does. I'll also talk about, the API. Okay, so Gemini API, that is what we'll talk about, and we'll explore the API as well. So if you have not used Gemini, don't worry. We also build a backend step by step. So this entire backend we'll be building step by step. So excited? Let's jump right in. I'll see you inside the course. So now it's time that we begin exploring the Google's Gemini API. This is what we are going to use. And what we are going to do is we are going to head over to google.com over here. And I would request you all to search for Gemini API, or you can even search for Google Gemini API. And when you search, you will find that you will get this URL over here, ai.google.dev, and you can see Gemini Developer API. So I would request you to open this particular URL and head over to this website. Now, this is a landing page that you would see or you would be welcomed with. Now, one disclaimer I would want to add over here, Google updates this website every now and then. Like this field of AI is evolving so fast, so they are updating the website every now and then. And now, depending on when you're watching this video, you might see a completely different UI over here. But don't worry, the core concepts of how you can make use of API still remains the same. So there will be few UI tweaks that Google might do or might not do. I don't know. All right. But if you see some UI tweaks, that's absolutely fine and nothing to worry about. You will still be able to follow this video. So if you scroll down, here you have an option to explore models in Google AI Studio. And here you have all these things that are demonstrated. So you can integrate Google AI model with an API key into apps. You can explore Google AI models and so on. You can like go through the entire website over here. Okay. And if you scroll up over here, I'll just click on explore models in Google AI Studio. But before clicking on this, I would want to talk about something. So if you go over here under models, you'll see something called as pricing. So head over to pricing over here. Now, there are different models that exist, like even with ChatGPT, Google Gemini, there are different models with different abilities that exist. So here you can see, as I'm recording this video, Gemini 1.5 Flash is available. And depending on when you're watching the video, you might see some latest model like above Gemini 1.5 Flash that are better than this model exist, right? Because this field of AI is evolving so fast that there is a new model in the market every few months, right? So depending on when you're watching this video, you might see a new model, but don't worry. The details I'm going to show you is also going to apply to any new models that come over. So if you scroll down over here, you are going to see the pricing of this model. You will see over here, it's free of charge. So Google has this good thing wherein they have a free tier, a generous free tier is what I would say. So you can see over here in this free tier, you get this input pricing free of charge, output pricing free of charge. There is a rate limit on how you use this API. And you can try it in Google AI Studio. And so this free tier, first of all, is very helpful if you are trying to like create some sort of POCs or some sort of projects to add to your resume or portfolio to get a better job. Also, this free tier is useful if you're trying to build a product that solves a particular problem and you plan to convert it into paying and if you plan to convert it into a paid subscription later on. So when you start making money from the product and if you have enough traffic, you can switch over to pay as you go model as well. Okay. And you can see over here, the rate limits and all vary as compared to the free plan. So if you have a project in mind that you are that is solving a particular problem and you wish to charge your users for the same, you can start with the free tier and you can later on upgrade to the paid version as your application scales. Okay, but free tier is good for most of the use cases is what I've realized, and they have a pretty generous free tier. All right, and you don't need to spend a dime. Okay, so I'll come over here to homepage and I'll click on explore models in Google AI Studio. Now here you'll be taken to Google AI Studio. All right, you can like play around with the studio over here. You can type in some sort of information over here, like ask something to AI and you can play around. Okay, you can get a recipe list, city scavenger, recipe finder, and so on. And you can switch over the models here from here and you can experiment with the models over here. Okay, so this is a playground. You can adjust the temperature, structured output, and all these settings, right? Now what we need to do is we need to integrate Google Gemini and we need to get API key for that. So I'll click over here. You can see over here, get API key. So if I click over here, you'll be taken to this page wherein you have an option or a button to create an API key. Now I already have a few API keys already created. So I'm not going to create an API key, but the process is pretty simple. You can say create an API key and it will ask you to select a project and then it will give you the API key absolutely free of cost. All right. Now here, how would you use the API key? So here at the top, you'll see this code. Okay, it says quickly test Gemini API. And here you have a curl request. Okay, so you can make use of this request to make use of API key. And also you have this API quick start guide, which you can click on. And you'll be taken to this particular page. Okay, you can also go to this page from the website as well. So if you come over here under solutions, okay, let me go to solutions. And if you say Gemini API, you'll see here quick start, right? So it's the same page that we came in from here, right? Now here what you will see is how you can make use of Gemini, Google Gemini across different programming languages like Python, Node.js. You can select Node.js, Golang, or with any or in the REST format. Basically, you'll get the curl request over here, and this is the same curl request that you're seeing here on the dashboard. Okay, so we need to test this curl request to see what kind of input this API needs and what kind of output we can expect, because we want to integrate this into our application. So I'll copy this to clipboard. All right, I'll come over here to Postman. Now in Postman, what I would request you all is to create a workspace. First of all, you need to have Postman installed onto your system. So Postman or any sort of API client that helps you simulate an API request. So I make use of Postman. You create a collection over here, new collection. I've created this collection called Gemini API. And here you can say import. So we have copied the curl request. So I would import this request. I'll come over here and you'll see this pop-up wherein you can paste the curl request, raw text or a URL. So I'll paste the curl request, and what it will do is it will identify the request. It will show you the request over here and it will give you the request name over here. So request name is Gemini API over here, right? I'm giving a custom name. You can give whatever name you wish to, and it's telling me under which collection you want to create this request. So I'll say Gemini API over here because that's what the name of my collection, and I'll say import into collection. So you can see this has been imported into the collection. I'll collapse this sidebar. And here now you have to add the API key. Okay, if you go to body, here you can add any sort of prompt. So here the default prompt is explain how AI works. So what I will do is I will come over here and the API key that I have generated in the dashboard, I'll add it over here. So let me do that for you. So I have added my own API key in the params tab over here. Okay, and I have this thing over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say send, and I'll get a response from Gemini, Google's Gemini, as to how AI works. So it will explain me how AI works. And you can see over here, this is the structure of the response. You can see this is the explanation of how AI works by AI. Okay, so if you see over here, okay, first it needs a param wherein you're passing in the API key, and the API also needs the request body in the form of JSON in this way. And here you can see you have contents, you have parts, then you have the text. Oops. So then you have the text which has the prompt that you want to add to, or that you want to send to Google Gemini. Okay, and the response you get is in this format. Okay, so there is a format that you need to use to get the data from the API. So if you scroll up over here, you'll see there is candidates, content, parts, and text. Now this is the text that you get as the response, and you can see role is model, finish reason is stop, and if you see over here usage metadata. So it is also giving you usage metadata like prompt token count, candidate token count, and total token count, and also the model version that was used to generate this response. Now what is token? So when it comes to making use of AI models, the amount of usage that is happening is calculated in the form of tokens, and you are basically priced, or you're basically charged depending on how much token or how many tokens you're using. So if you head over here to basically pricing, let me check the pricing over here. Okay, oops, I opened multiple tabs accidentally. So here if you go to pricing, okay, we don't have, okay, here you can see these are tokens, right? 1 million tokens per minute, 1500 requests per day, you can see. So here you can see tokens already. So it's making use of tokens, and that is the information that you get over here as well. So this request generated how many tokens or made use of how many tokens. All right. So I hope you have a good sense of how you can make use of the API. Now this structure, understanding this structure, like the body, request body, and the output structure is important, and it gives you an insight into how this API is, how you can make use of this API in the applications, because you have to make sure that the input that you are giving to the API is in this format and the output you are getting should be in this format. And this is important. Understanding the output is important so that you can parse it properly and make use of the output in a sensible way. All right, so I hope this is clear, and I hope you have been able to follow along. So now is the time that we begin setting up our Spring Boot project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to our favorite website, which is Spring Initializer. We're going to configure our project and download the zip file. So I'll select Maven over here because that is the dependency, or that is the build tool, not dependency. That is the build tool that I'm using. You can Feel free to use Gradle if you wish to. Java, I'm going to select the latest Spring Boot version, that is a non-snapshot version. Okay. And group, I'm going to say com.research over here, and I'm going to call the artifact as assistant over here, something like this. So this would be the package name. Okay. In fact, over here, I can say research. One second. I can say research over here, research assistant. And here in the package name, I can simply say assistant. I'll just edit this manually. I don't want research to be repeated twice. Research is already coming in over here. Okay. So this is our configuration. And on the right hand side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some dependencies. First of all, web, because of course we're going to build REST APIs. So this is going to be a web project. Then I'll add Lombok. Lombok is a library, if you're not aware, which can help you reduce your boilerplate code. For example, you don't need to write getters and setters. You have to just make use of Lombok annotations, right? There's another thing. And then you have Webflux. So I'll say Webflux over here. So I'll select this and you have Webflux added. All right. Now we'll head over to explore and we'll see if all the dependencies have been added in the right way. I'll close this. Okay. And you can click on generate. Now, why are we making use of Webflux? Because we'll be making use of web client for making the API calls. So here, if you see, if you search for web client Spring Boot, you will get this first link, which is the official website of Spring. Or you can come over to the official website like docs.spring.io. Okay, if you don't want to Google. And over here, you can search, you can go on the Spring framework and you can search for web client and you will see this over here. Okay, so we will be making use of web client for making the HTTP request. Okay, and it has, you can read about this. It allows you to make use of, so Webflux, basically the dependency that we have added over here, allows us to make use of web client to make API calls. So that is what we are going to make use of. All right. Now, without further ado, I'm just going to click generate and I'm going to download the zip file. So generate button is going to give me the zip file for this entire project settings that I have done. It is going to generate a project for me and I can save it to the location of my choice wherever I am building this entire project. So make a folder on your local machine wherein you will be building the front end, back end, and whatever you need for this application, and just download this zip file over there. So in this particular folder, I've downloaded the zip and I'm going to unzip it over here. Okay, so you can make use of any software on your local machine to unzip it, and now you have the entire project over here. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to head over to IntelliJ and I'm going to navigate to this particular folder. Now after you navigate to this particular folder, which is a Spring Boot project that you have unzipped, select the pom.xml from the file or from the folder and just say okay. So it is going to ask you whether you want to open this as a project or as a file. So I'll open this as a project and I'll say trust the project. Okay, so this has opened it for me. Okay, and you have the project configured. Okay, so you can see over here, it's asking you whether you want to load the Maven project. You can say load over there, and it is resolving dependencies for us based on whatever is added in pom.xml. All right, so the application is up, and yeah, we have the application configured in IntelliJ. Now we are ready with the next steps. So now it's time that we take our application further and we start building the APIs that we need for our application or for our project. I'm going to come over here under SRC and I'm going to create a new file. Okay, this is going to be a Java file and I'm going to call this file as, okay, what happened? I didn't do a proper click, but I'll call this file as research controller. So this is going to be our controller that will basically have the endpoints defined. Okay, so first thing what I will do is I'll say request mapping over here and I'll have /API/research. Okay, so I'm mapping all the endpoints that we defined in this particular controller with this particular URL. Okay, and I'll have REST controller over here. Okay, something like this, REST controller. And I'll add one more thing over here because we will be making use of this in front end. So I'm going to add a cross origin annotation over here, and I'm going to say allow accessing all the endpoints in this controller from any front end. Okay, so that is what I'm doing. Okay, you can choose to add a domain name or anything over here if you want to allow requests from a particular host. All right, now this is done. What I will also do is parallelly, I will also create a service class. So I'll say research service over here. Okay, and this service, okay, so I'll say cancel. I'll add a service annotation over here, something like this. Okay, so I'm doing this, and now I'll come over here and I'll get the object over here of research service. So I'll say private final research service, and I'll say research service, something like this. Okay, now this is throwing some error. Okay, add a constructor parameter because this variable might not have been initialized. Okay, makes sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say all args constructor. So this is an annotation from Lombok that will make an all argument constructor with all the fields that you have defined. Okay, so this particular thing will be auto wired now by Spring. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a endpoint over here. So I'm going to say response entity over here, something like this, and I'm going to say I'm going to say string, and I'm going to say process content. Okay, and this is going to have a request body, or let us define that later on over here. Okay, I'm simply returning something over here so that I don't see red marks. Okay, so this is the method. Okay, now here I'm going to say post mapping. So we are going to link this to a post request, and this will be process, something like this. Okay, so this is done. Now what I will do is we need a format in which we accept the request, right? And for that I'm going to structure things. So I'll create a new class and I'll call this class as research request. Okay, and here what I will do is I will have all the fields that I want to have in the request body, right? So since we are building a research tool, okay, it will have a content, right? So I'm going to say content over here, something like this. I'll say operation over here. Okay, what sort of operation do you wish to perform? Okay, so these two things I'll add, and I'll add getters and setters. So I'll make use of this data annotation from Lombok, which will add the relevant getters and setters for this particular class over here. Okay, now back to controller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to accept request body. I'm going to say within the request body, give me the object. So I'll say research request. So where is research request? Okay, research request.java. Okay, it exists. So research request here you go. Okay, so research request, I'll accept research request type. Okay, I can call this as request as well over here. Okay, so this is done. Now what I would do is here I would say string result. Okay, and I would say research service dot process content. Okay, now of course this method does not exist, but we'll be defining this method shortly. Okay, and this will take request as the parameter. Okay, and then we need to simply return the result over here. Okay, so we need to wrap it up in response entity. So I'm going to say response entity dot okay, and I'll say result. Okay, so this is the controller setup wherein we are having this post mapping called /process, and we are accepting the object of type research request along with the request body, and with the help of service we are calling in process content. Now we need this method, so I'll create this method in research service. Okay, now this is a method that is going to give us the output. So what it will do is it will basically query the Gemini API or any sort of AI model that you are using apart from Gemini as well. It will query there. It will create a prompt first. It will query the AI model. It will get the response. It will pass the response and it will return it as a string. All these things are going to happen. Okay. So first thing is we need to build the prompt. Like I said, build the prompt. Then we would query the API. Okay, or AI model, AI API, AI model API, something like this. And then we are going to parse the response. And then we are going to return response, something like this. Okay, so these are the 4 steps. Now what I will do is we will have to craft a prompt. So you can write the logic here itself in this method, but what I would prefer doing is I would have a separate method over here. So I'm going to say private string and I'll say build prompt, something like this. Okay, so I'm crafting a prompt over here and this is going to get research request object over here. Okay, and within this what I'm going to do is I'll create an object of type string builder, something like this, string builder, or I shouldn't call it prompt over here. Okay, because this is going to have the string builder over here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is research request. So this research request has something called as operation. Okay, now operation can be summarize this content. Okay, so if you want to summarize this content, you can have summarize as the operation. If you want to get similar suggestions or suggest some related topics based on this particular content, you can have an operation as suggest, right? So there could be various keys that would be coming in operation. Okay, so what I will do is I will come over here and I'll make use of switch case. Okay, I'm going to say request dot get operation over here. Okay, and here I'm going to say case and summarize. I'm going to say summarize, something like this. And here I'm going to basically update this prompt variable. So this prompt variable I'm going to update. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say prompt and I'm going to say dot append over here. And I'm going to add the prompt that I wish to have over here. Now what I've done is I've typed out the prompt. So here, if the operation is of summarize, like if you're summarizing something, the prompt can be provide a clear and concise summary of the following text in a few sentences. Okay, this is what I've written. Of course, depending on your requirements, you can tweak this, and I missed a semicolon in the end, so that is why the red mark. But this is the prompt that I'm adding over here. Okay, now once you have added this, I'll add a break as well, something like this. And then what I would do is I would write another case statement. So I'll say case. Okay, now the another case statement can be suggest. Okay, so you can define as many operations that you want to have in your application. I'm having a couple of them. Okay, and we'll have a similar syntax for the prompt over here. Okay, now this prompt can be updated over here. Okay, this prompt needs to be updated. So I typed out this prompt as well. Now you can read this. Based on the following content, suggest related topics and further reading. Format the response with clear headings and bullet points. Okay, this is a prompt that I've created. You can tweak this again. Okay, this is what I'm writing in, but if you want something else or any sort of format you want to add as an example, you can definitely do that. Okay, whenever you're working with AI models, it's great if you provide as much of information as you can to the AI model. That is something that I believe in. Okay, so I've added this. Okay, prompt. I've updated this. Now you can add more operations if you wish to. All right, this is something that you can do. Or what we will do is I'll add a default case as well. Okay, so I'll say default, and here I'll say you can throw an exception. So I'll say throw new illegal argument exception, and I can say unknown operation. Okay, unknown operation, and I'll say request dot get operation. Okay, something like this. So this is how I'm handling this particular default case. Now what we will do is once the prompt is crafted, okay, we have just the text. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to also append the content, right? So research request has operation and the content. Now on the basis of operation, we have defined the text that will be there. Okay, we are saying, now take a look at the prompt over here. We are saying based on the following content. Okay, provide a clear and concise summary of the following text. Now where is the following text? So you need to append the text as well, right? So I'm going to come over here just outside the switch case. I'm going to say prompt dot, okay, let me scroll down. It might not be visible. Prompt dot append, and I'm going to say request dot get content, something like this. Okay, now what this will do is this will append the content, and I'm going to say return prompt dot to string. So taking a look at this method, what this method does, it is simply crafting the entire prompt. Okay, so what we are doing is we are creating string builder first, and then based on the operation, we are creating the prompt, and then we are appending the content to the prompt, and then we are returning the prompt as a string. That is what we are doing. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to call this particular method over here. So here we have the first step as build the prompt, right? So we need the prompt. So what we are going to do is here I'm going to say build prompt. I'm going to pass in request object here. Okay, and I'm going to get the prompt over here. So we have the prompt now in our service method, right? So I'm going to say prompt. Now what we need to do is we need to query the AI model API. Okay. Now if you take a look at the request over here, the request format over here in the body, okay, this is how the request is supposed to be sent. This is a format in which the API accepts the request. Now this is about Gemini API. If you're working with any other model, you need to tweak this step wherein you craft the request in a way the model API expects it to be. Okay, so you can see over here, it is having content, parts, and then within parts. So this content is actually an array. Okay, this content thing is actually an array. Then we have this parts key, which is again an array. You can see over here, this entire piece is array. And then you have text, right? So I'll come over here, I'll create something similar. I'm going to say map of string, and I'll say object over here. Okay, and I'll say request body, and I'll say, oops. So I'll say map, and map of is what I will make use of. So I'll create a map, and I'll add a semicolon. So here I'm going to say contents. Okay, and then I'll say new object. So it's an array, right? So I'll create an object array over here, object array, and then I'll have this curly braces, and then I'll say map of again, and here I'm going to say parts. Okay, and I'll say comma, I'll say new object, something like this. Okay, like so. And then again over here, I will say map of, and what is the map? Here it will be text, and then text comma prompt, something like this. So this is what the request body will be. So you can see over here, we have map of contents. Okay, so contents over here. Then we have parts over here, okay, in an array. So this map of contents is an array first of all. So we have created this object array. You can see over here. And then we have parts. And then we have again the array. And we have this key value pair of text and the prompt. So that is what we are doing. And you can print this if you wish to onto the console and check if this is actually generating the prompt in the right way or the request body in the right way. That is something that you can do over here. Okay. Now this is done. Okay, we have the request body. Now what we need to do is we need to query the model API. So we have prepared the request body. Now we need to actually make a API call. And for making the API call, we need to first configure our project to work with the AI model. And for that, I'm going to head over to resources and application properties. So we have this properties file where we would be adding all the details that our application is going to need to interact with the AI model. And I'm going to add a couple of parameters. So I'm going to say Gemini API.url. So it is going to have the URL, and I'm going to say Gemini API.key over here. Okay, which will have the API key. Okay, so I'll say Gemini key over here, something like this. Okay, and this is going to have the URL. So I'm going to just paste the URL here. So you can see I've added the URL. Okay, now what I've done is I've added the URL until key is equal to. Okay, until key is equal to. So here in Postman, when you were making an API call, okay, you made use of this URL, right? Now the key is disabled over here. Okay, but right now I added a dummy key, and you can see this is the format in which the key is added in the end. Okay, you can go to params tab and you can add the key. Okay, and you can see this is how it's added. So just remove the key until equal to sign is what you need to paste over here. Okay, so I've added that, and you need to add the key. So what I'm going to do is I've added this variable over here, okay, which I'm going to configure. So I'm going to come over here. Okay, first of all, I will run this application so that there is a run configuration that is created. I'll say enable annotation processing, Of course, we'll get the error because we have left a lot of things incomplete. But what I will do is I'll get this run configuration. I'll go to edit configurations, and here I'm going to make use of this environment variable tab. Now, if you're not seeing this environment variable tab, you need to go to modify options and you need to check environment variable. If this is unchecked, you won't see this. You need to check this. Now, the moment you check, you will have an option to add environment variable, and this is a format you can see at the bottom in the subtext. You can see where is equal to value. So you can say Gemini key. This is the variable name, and you need to add key here. You need to paste the key here. One alternative is you can head over to this icon over here, and you can add your own keys using the graphical user interface. So you can add it something like this also. So you can see what I've added over there is coming in over here, and you can edit it from here also. Okay, so these all things are possible. So I'll just add my key. Now, after adding the key, be sure to say apply. If you just say OK, changes won't be applied. Say apply and then say OK. Okay, so I'll just paste my key over here and then I'll say apply and OK. Okay, so I've just added the key and I've said OK. Now what will happen is whenever you run the application, this Gemini key would be injected from the variable that you have added there, and it will be picked up by your application. All right. Now this is done. What we need to do is we need to make use of these URL and key in our application. So I'll come over here to research service. I'll scroll up, and over here I am going to get the variables, right, or the properties that we have defined in application properties. So I'm going to say private string Gemini API URL, something like this. Okay, and I'm going to say private string Gemini API key, something like this. Okay, now we need to get this injected from the application.properties. So I'm going to say value, and here we need to mention the property name. So I'm going to say $, something like this, and this entire thing should be within double quotes like so. And here I'm going to say Gemini.api.url. Okay, now this is what Gemini.api.url is what you have mentioned in the application.properties. So this has to match exactly as is. Okay, now come over here. Okay, I'll get rid of this. Come over to service. Where is the service? Here. And I'll duplicate this here. And instead of URL, you can now add key. Okay, so key will be injected over here. Okay, now we need to make the actual API call. So what I will do is I'll come over here. Okay, I'm going to say string response. So this is a response from the API. I'm going to make use of web client. Okay, so I realized I have not created an instance of web client. So I'll come over here. Okay, I'll say private final web client, and I'll say web client. Now we need to initialize this web client. So what I'm going to do is so it will say add a constructor parameter. Okay, so it created a constructor. I'm going to say web client dot builder over here, and web client dot builder, and I'll say web client builder. Over here, something like this, and here I'm going to say web client builder dot build. Okay, something like this. So this is what I'm going to do, and this is going to help me get an instance of web client, and then I'm going to make use of the web client over here. Okay, so I can say web client, and I'm going to make a post request, right? So this will be post like so, and we need to say URI. What is the URI? So URI is Gemini API URL plus the key. So we'll append these both. I'll say dot body value, something like this. Body value is request body over here, and scroll up. Okay, so I'll just keep it this way so that you can see. Dot retrieve. So I'm going to make this request. Oops, and I'll say body to mono. Yes, body to mono, and I'll say string dot class, and then I'm going to say dot block. Okay, so this is the format. Okay, now this is how you will make a request using the web client, and then what I will do is I will pass the response and I'll return it. Okay, so we'll have a single step for both of these: pass the response and return it. Now how is the response returned from the API? So if you see over here, this is how you get the response. This is the response. You need to parse this entirely, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a new method. Okay, I'm going to say return extract text from response over here, and I'm going to say response over here, something like this. Okay, so I'll need a one more method and I'll create this method. Okay, so this is the method that we are going to make use of. Okay, now what does this do? So I'm going to say try. Okay, I'm going to create a try catch block. Oops. So try block is here, and it is going to have catch as well with an exception of e type, and I'm going to say or I can say return parsing error, or I can say error parsing, something like this, and I'm going to say e dot get message. Okay, so this is done and this is taken care of. Now over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse the data. Now to pass a response, I think it would be really smart if we create a class that represents this response. So we have these candidates, then we have content, parts, text. Okay, so what I would do is I would come over here. Let us create a new class, Java class, and I would call this as Gemini response, something like this. Okay, now here within this particular class, I'm going to actually add everything that the class that basically we are getting from the Gemini response. Okay, I'm going to say over here Gemini response. I'm going to say private list and list of candidates. Candidate. Okay, and I'm going to call this as candidate. Okay, it should be candidate. Okay, and I'm going to call this as candidate list, something like this over here. Okay, and this candidate is actually a class. Okay, so if you see here, this is the list of candidates. It's a list, right? You can see it's in it has a square bracket, so it's a list. Okay, now within this list there is you have a candidate, you have a content, you have part as well, right? So I'm going to say private static, and it will be a static. I'll say class candidate, something like this, and over here I'm going to say private content, and this will be content. Now content does not exist, so what I will do is I'll say private static, static, and I'll say class content, something like this, and here I'm going to say private list of part also does not exist, we'll define it. Okay, parts, and then over here if you come, we'll have part also defined. So I'll just duplicate this, and I'll say instead of content this will be part, and here instead of list this is going to be a string, and I'll say text, something like this. Okay, so you can see text, parts, content, and the list of candidates. So this is how it will resemble. Okay, this is the response. We need to import a list over here, so I'll get that imported. Now if you take a look at this is actually nesting. Okay, so you can see part is a part of content. Okay, so this part class is a part of content, right? Then content is a part of candidate, and then candidate is a part of Gemini response over here. You can see. So this is actually, we are creating a class that is representing a nested JSON response, and that is what we are getting over here, right? So this class will be representing this. We'll add a few annotations over here. I'll add one annotation as JSON ignore properties, and I'll say ignore unknown to that of true. Now what this does is, if there are any other properties that are being returned by this particular API over here, and if those properties are not known to this particular class, then instead of the app throwing the error, it is simply going to ignore those properties. Okay, it is only going to keep things that we need. Okay, now one thing is over here, I've named this as candidate list. It should be candidates. So this is the name over here, right? So it should be candidates. This should be content. This should be parts, and this should be text. So just be sure to have the variable names right, and I'll add these two annotations everywhere to every class. Okay, because I think they are important. So this is done, and then to the content as well, and then to the part as well. something like this. Okay, so this is now taken care of. All right, now what I will do is here I'll say Gemini response. Okay, now what I will do is I'll say, so one second, I'll say Gemini response is equal to, I'll make use of object mapper over here to get the JSON mapped to this response over here, or to this response type, or to object of Gemini response over here. Okay, so that is what I'm going to make use of. So I'll scroll up over here, and here I'm going to say private final object mapper. You can see this is coming in from Jackson library. I'll say object mapper, and this will be object mapper. Now we need to also get this initialized. So here in the constructor that we already have, I'll say object mapper, and here if I come, I'll say this dot object mapper is equal to object mapper, something like this. So I'm getting this initialized. Okay, now with the help of object mapper, what will happen is the response that we are getting here in the form of JSON is mapped to this class. That is what is the rule of object mapper. Of course, we defined a class, but this is a Java class, and the response that we are getting is in the form of JSON. So how do you convert this JSON into the object type? So you're making use of object mapper over here. You'll say object mapper dot read value, and you will say response, and I'll say Gemini response dot class, something like this. Okay, so this is taken care of. Now what I will do is I will say I'll add if condition. So we'll check if the Gemini response has candidates, okay, and if they are not empty. So these two checks will add over here. Okay, so I'll say if Gemini response dot get candidates, so dot get candidates is not equal to null over here, and is not equal to null, and I'll say Gemini response dot get candidates dot is empty. Okay, so if these two things are, if there is a candidate, then what we will do is we will say Gemini response dot candidate. So why this is not working? This should ideally work. So let me come over here to Gemini response. We should be able to refer to these. Okay, so these are private. It should not be private. It should be public over here. Okay, it cannot be private because we want to refer it outside the class. Okay, so I'll say candidate over here. Okay, and you can see now the error is gone. I'll say first candidate is equal to Gemini response dot get candidates dot get 0, something like this. Okay, so this is taken care of. If I'll add an if condition, I'll say first candidate dot get content not equal to null over here. If this is not null, and first candidate dot get content, let me take this to new line. Actually, it will be a big condition. So I'll say if this content dot get parts is not equal to null, and so we are adding one more condition. I'll say not equal to, okay, I'll say not equal to first candidate dot get content, okay, and dot get parts dot get 0 dot get text. Okay, so if this exists, then in that case what you do is you will have to return first candidate dot get content dot get parts dot get 0, and then we return the text, something like this. So we are returning the text basically from here. Okay, what is this saying? We are getting an error over here. It says not equal to first candidate. Okay, not operator cannot be applied to a string. Okay, so it's first candidate get content get parts, okay, get parts, and okay, so this can be something like this. I'll say get parts not equal to null. So this can be, I'll get rid of this, get parts is empty. We can make use of is empty over here. Okay, so the error is gone, and you can take a look at the condition. So what we are doing is so with this entire operation over here, if what we are doing is we are trying to get this text over here. Okay, which text? So this text over here. This is what we are trying to get, because rest of the things we don't need. We just need the response under the text, because this is what the actual output is from the API, right? So coming back over here, we are first getting the response mapped to that of Gemini response, and then we are making use of if statement. We are checking if there are candidates in the Gemini response. If candidate exists, then we are getting the first candidate, and then in the first candidate we are checking if the content is not equal to null, if the parts are not equal to null, if the parts are also not empty. If that's the case, then we are getting the text over here. Okay, something like this. And then let me scroll up over here. Okay, so here extract text from response. So this is done. Okay, so everything is done. I don't think we are seeing any sort of errors now. All right, so our API is ready to be consumed. So now let's run the application. So I'll just hit this run button from here. Okay, we get this error. So all the getters and setters are not working, and this research service is not initialized. This error is likely because of Lombok. So I'll come over here to fix this issue. I'll head over to settings, and we'll head over to annotations over here. Okay, so under compiler, annotation processing. So under build execution, compiler, annotation processing, just select your project, and just instead of this processor path, just select obtain processors from project class path. So this will make sure that Lombok is working fine. So I'll run this now, and let us take a look. Okay, so there is a return statement missing over here. Okay, so extract text from the response. So what should be the return statement? Okay, so let me head over here. So here there has to be a return statement on line number 67. So this we returned over here. So here, just before the catch, okay, I'm going to say return, and I'll add no content found in response, so something like this. So if you are not returning from here, you need to return this, that no content found. Okay, so I'll run this. Let us see the output. So the application is running successfully now, and we'll come over here, okay, to this particular, to Postman essentially. I'll simply create a new folder over here, a blank collection. I'll call this as research assistant over here. Okay, and I'll add a request. Okay, so this is our request. I'll say localhost 8080, and what is the endpoint over here? So API/research/process. That is what the endpoint is. So I'll say API/research/process, something like this. Okay, so this is done, and in the body, I need to add the body, right? So I'll come over here to raw. I'll select JSON, and over here we'll add key value pairs, a couple of key value pairs. Okay, so this is key. So over here, first key is the content. Okay, so content, we'll add the content. The content will be added here, and then we have the operation. Okay, so what is the operation? Operation can be summarize or whatever you want it to be. So you can say summarize. Okay, something like this. Oops, summarize, and this can be test, something like this. So in order to send some text, I'll copy this article about web client. Okay, let us see if our application summarizes it perfectly. So I'll add double quotes and I'll paste this. Okay, and here I'll add this summarize. Okay, let me send this request and let us see if we get any sort of error. Now this should be post, of course. So I'll say request. Okay, here I'll send this. Okay, so you can see we got this response over here, and it has summarized it. You can see we have summarized it. So summarization is still that of 3 lines. Okay, but this was the request and we got this response, and the API is working fine. Now if you have any sort of long article, if you provide over here, you'll get the right response. Okay, it will be summarized to like 2 or 3 lines. Okay, so this is working absolutely okay, and I hope you have some clarity as to how this entire process worked. We're making use of a couple of DTOs or a couple of request response classes over here, a couple of classes that represent request response. One is the research request, other one is the Gemini response. Okay, and here we are making use of controller, which is accepting the request, passing it over to service over here, and service is doing the job of talking to the AI model and giving us the response. I hope this has been insightful, and I hope you have been able to follow along. Hey there. So now it's time that we begin thinking about the Chrome extension, and we are going to understand how we can build a Chrome extension and how we can consume the APIs that we have built with Spring Boot. So the best part about APIs is they can be consumed from anywhere, whether it's a front-end application, whether it's a Chrome extension, or whether it's a mobile app. So you can create any sort of application, even desktop applications. So you can create any sort of applications and consume APIs that are hosted on the internet. All right. So here on Google, I have incognito mode open, and here on Google, just search for how to create extension in Google Chrome. Now you will see tons of articles over here, and I'm going to take a look at the official ones from Chrome and Google. Okay. So here there are two links. Okay. This is like extensions getting started. Okay, and I'll open this in a new tab, and I have this another link, create and publish Chrome apps and extensions. Okay, so I'll open this. All right, now over here, if you see, you can see like this is how you can build an app or an extension for Google Chrome. Right, so here they've given some steps, and you have the link to get started tutorial with Chrome extensions building. All right, and if you click on this link, this get started tutorial, you will actually land on this page itself. Okay, developer.chrome.com, which is the first link over here. All right, so here you will find an overview of how you can create. Like first step is create a folder where you will have all the extension files. You will create a manifest, then you will save the file as manifest.json. You'll add a logo, you will test it. So it's a very high level step. Okay, you can follow this if you're familiar with how you can create extensions. But we are going to go a little bit deep and understand nitty-gritties of extensions, right? Now over here, you will see this link. Okay, this is from Chrome for developers. And here you will see everything in detail. Okay, so build your first extension. Now, one thing I forgot to talk about is what is an extension first of all. All right. Now here in browser, basically you have extensions that you can add. Now, every browser supports extension. For example, Firefox and Chrome are two most popular browsers out there, and they both supports extension, which help you enhance the ability of the browsers. So there are some inbuilt features that browser has, and if you want to enhance or extend those abilities or features, or you want to add some extra features into your browser, you can make use of extensions. So extensions are like plugin that you have to install onto your browser, and you can make use of it. That is what extensions are, just in case if you're not aware. Okay, so if you come over here, you have this get started. Okay, now you can see over here what are extensions. So Chrome extensions enhance the browsing experience by customizing user interface, observing browser event, and modifying the web. Okay, they help you add additional features. How are they built? You can build using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what can they do? They can do a lot of things. Okay, you can read more about the guide. Now, there are some terminologies that are mentioned over here. Okay, and like I'll talk about a few terminologies like manifest. Now, what is a manifest file? So it's a file, and this is the only required file. So rest all the files are optional. But if you're building a Chrome extensions, this is the only required file that must have the specific name as manifest.json. So when you load the extension into Google Chrome is going to look for a file with this name, and it is going to load the extension. And this is a file that has all the configuration for that particular extension. Okay. Now, one more thing I would want to mention that I'm talking about Chrome extension here. If you want to build an extension for Firefox, you can refer to the appropriate documentation. Okay. Because see, I'm teaching you how to build an extension using Chrome. Okay. And I'm taking you through each and every step. Like I'm going through the documentation. I'm showing you how you can even read the docs. So this knowledge is very essential, because tomorrow if some other browser comes into market, you should be aware of how you can crack, like how you can build an extension for the same browser as well. Okay, how you can crack the development for the same. So that is really important. And that's what software engineering is. You need to figure things out, right? So you can see over here, manifest. So this is an important file when it comes to Chrome extension building. It also has to be located in the extension root directory. And the manifest records important metadata, like I said, configuration. Okay, it defines resources, permissions, everything around the extension. It also has the extension name. So all of this is defined in manifest. All right. Service worker. So it says it's a worker that runs in the background and handles browser events like removing a bookmark and all. Content script. So this is like JavaScript. Okay, it runs in the context of web page. We have toolbar action, side panel, and declarative net request. So we are not going to use this, but we are going to mainly use manifest, and we're going to use a few scripts to build our extension. Okay, and you can publish it to Chrome Web Store as well, so that people can search and download your extension. That is something you can do. Okay, now if you scroll down, you have very good tutorials that have been provided by Chrome team over here. Okay, so a huge applaud for them. They've made extension building so easy. So here you can see you can build your first extension by following this tutorial. Okay, and you can see there are quite a few tutorials over here. You can debug your extension, handle service work, create a tab manager, inject scripts into the active tab, run scripts on every page. So all of this can be done. Okay, and here there are a few tabs at the top that can help you also explore the extension building. You can also take a look at the AI tab over here, and here there is a get inspired tab. You can go over here and you can get inspired with what World has built. How Spotify is using picture-in-picture API to build a Spotify mini player. Scroll driven animation case studies. So all of these are case studies, okay, from people across the globe. All right, now if you come over here, what we are going to do is we are going to start this first tutorial, our first extension. Okay, and this is a very simple extension, and as per the convention, whenever you're learning something new, you first make hello world in that particular language or technology. So here also we'll be making hello world extension. We'll be following this step-by-step guide. Okay, it's not a rocket science. We'll follow it step by step, and we'll basically simulate this onto our local machine. Okay, now the IDE that I'll be making use of is like Visual Studio Code. All right, because this is the best IDE when it comes to web development. It's free and open source, so be sure to have Visual Studio Code installed onto your system, and we'll go through it. So okay, so what does this extension do? It will help us create a hello world example and load the extension locally, right? So this is what the extension look like. It has this logo and it shows this pop-up over here, right? Hello extensions. Okay, now here it's guiding us like what we need to do. So first we need to create a new directory for all our extension files. So I'll just say open folder over here, and I'll just navigate to this folder here, something like this, and I'll just say select folder. So this is just going to open this folder, and I'll just close this because we are going to create all the files over here. All right, now if you come over here, okay, it's telling us if you prefer, you can download the full source code from GitHub. So here they have a GitHub URL as well, which is very generous of them. And here you can see tutorial.hello world. They have these 4 files that we are going to create. One is an HTML file, hello extensions.png, which is likely the logo of the extension, manifest.json, which I already spoke about, and we have popup.js, which is a JavaScript file. Manifest.json is holding all the configuration related to the extension, and hello.html is loading the JavaScript. All right. So I'll come over here. I'll just close this case study tab. Okay, I'll close all the unwanted tabs. Come over here and we'll see. Okay, we'll follow this tutorial. So create a new file called manifest.json, and like we know, this JSON file describes the capabilities and configuration. Right. So it is helping us define all the configuration, like what sort of version this extension is having. So take a look at this file. This is a sample file over here that we are going to create. So it has a name. You can see. It has a description, which is the description of the extension, the version, the manifest version, action. So this is so you can see over here. Okay. For example, most manifests contain action key, which declares the image Chrome should use as an extension action icon. So you can see this is the default icon, hello extensions.png. So this icon that you see over here, hi, that is what it's being shown over here, default icon, right? And the HTML page to show in the pop-up when the extensions icon is clicked. So if the user clicks on this extension, what should happen? So that is being defined by this HTML. Okay. So that's what action is doing over here, right? So this is what we are going to do. So I'll copy this file name. Okay. Be sure not to have any sort of spelling mistake over here. And that's the sole reason why I'm copying it. I'll just create this JSON in the root of the extension directory. I'll copy this and I'll paste it over here. Okay. So this manifest.json is created. All right. Now scroll down. Okay. They're also giving us the icon. So I'll just open this icon.png and I'll save it over here. So what I will do is I'll copy this image, copy image. I'll come over here. Let me paste it. Are you sure you want to paste? Yes, of course. So you can see the image is over here now, image.png. Okay. And it's called hello extensions.png, right? So I'll close this actually, and we need to name the image as hello extensions.png. Okay. So be sure to change its name to match what's there in the default icon. So if you're mentioning hello extensions.png, be sure to change the name of the image to hello extensions.png. So I'll right click, I'll say rename, and I'll update the image name over here, something like this. Okay. So this is done. All right. Now what we need to do is for the pop-up, we need to create an HTML file. So I'll copy this. We need to say hello.html, and hello.html because we have mentioned the HTML file name as hello.html over here. If you're changing this name, be sure to create a file with that name. Okay. So I'll say hello.html, something like this. Okay. And then come over here, scroll down. Okay. And we are going to, the extension now displays a pop-up when the extension's action icon bar is clicked, and you can test it in Chrome by loading it locally. All right. So now is the time. We have a very simple extension, which is just loading this pop-up, right? Which is loading this UI, hello extensions. So we need to now test it, and to test it, we need to load this extension into our browser. Now, what does loading mean? Now, loading is a process wherein we are actually telling Chrome to load this extension or load all the files of this extension and show us the output so that we can test it. Okay. So you can see over here, they have also given steps as to how you can load the extension. All right. So to load an unpacked extension in developer mode, go to extension page by entering this into your browser. Okay. So you can enter this into your browser. So I'll copy this and you can enter over here. But one thing, I'm in incognito mode. In incognito, it won't load extensions. Okay. So to load this, you need to go to actual browser mode and you can just paste this URL over here. So you'll see this open up. Okay. Now, if you're not interested in pasting this, you can also go from here. You can click on options. Okay. Scroll down and you should see extensions over here, and you have this option to manage extensions. So if you click on that, you will come over here, the same page. So you can do that way as well, or you can directly paste the URL. Okay. Whichever way you prefer. So go over here. Now what you need to do is alternatively, you can click on the extension puzzle menu. Okay. So this is they are saying what I just showed you. Okay. And you need to enable the developer mode. So you need to enable the developer mode before you load the extension, and then you need to click on load unpack button and select the extension directory. Okay. So come over here. I'll just show you what needs to be done. Now on the right hand side here in Google Chrome, you will see developer mode. What this means is you can enable developer mode over here, and you are telling Google Chrome that give me options so that I can use all the features that are there in Google Chrome for building extensions. So if you say enable developer mode, you will see this option pane appear, and here you have an option to like load unpacked extension, pack extension, and update. So I'll say load unpacked. Okay. Now when you say load unpacked, it will show a explorer, and you need to navigate to the directory where you have created all the files for extension. Okay. For example, this is the directory where we have created all the files for extension. So we need to navigate over there, and we need to select that directory, and we need to say okay. So let me show that to you. So I just navigated to the folder where my project is created and all the file related to this project is. Now in this folder, there is a folder that I've created hello world extension ext. So I'll select this, and the moment you select this, you will see extension loaded at the bottom left. And here you will see hello extensions 1.0 base level extension. Now where is this coming in from? So if you come over here, hello extensions is the name, and base level extensions is the description that you have given to it. Okay. You can see the ID and version also being shown over here. So version is coming in over here. It's being picked up from here. Okay. So if you are launching extension onto Chrome App Store or Chrome Web Store, you can basically update the version for every new release over here. Okay. You have the manifest version as well. All right. Now this is done. Okay. The extension is loaded. Now what you can do over here is, if you come here, let us take a look at the guide. You have to pin the extension. Okay. What does this mean? So if you come here, you can see there is no extension icon that is being shown over here. So for the extension icon to be shown over here, you need to pin it so that you can see it all the time. So I'll click on this icon, which is the extensions icon, and you can come over here. You can see your extension, right? And you can see these extensions do need to see and change information on this side because we have not taken any permission. So that is why it's showing you this, right? You can pin it. Now you can see the icon. This is the icon that we have actually added over here. This is the icon, right? And you're seeing that icon appear over here. Okay. When you set pin, you're seeing this icon appear over here now, right? And when you click on this, you can see hello extensions. And where is this coming from, right? This is coming in from the HTML file that is being loaded, H1 extensions, right? You can see this. Okay. How great is this? You can see hello extensions, right? So you can see now how this worked, and this is the output that we are getting as well. All right. Now what we would do is we would make a small change and we'll see how we can refresh the change. So here you can see it's asking us to update the copy. So I'll just copy this hello extensions of the world. I'll just paste it over here. Hello extensions of the world. I saved it and come over here and let us see over here. You can see this did not require us to reload the extension. Okay. What does this mean is reloading is a process wherein you click on this icon. You can see this reload icon here, this reload icon. Okay. So you can reload if you have made some change onto your extension, you should reload. And there are kinds of changes that require reload. So if you come over here, okay. So here you can see they've demonstrated as to how you can reload the extension. And you can see if you change the manifest, you need to reload the extension. If you change the service worker, content script, pop-up. So pop-up options page and HTML pages do not require reload like we just saw. We made a change to HTML and we did not require reload. But changes like manifest, service worker, all of these and content script require reload. Okay, so it's important that you understand how you can do reloads. Okay, let's talk about console logs and errors over here. Okay, so we will add a script over here. We'll say script.src. Okay, let us add this. We'll add this link and then we'll create a popup.js and we'll add this file. Okay, so I'll say popup.js and we'll add this. This is a popup over here. Okay, now to see this message in the console, open the popup, right click the popup and say inspect, and then you will see this in the DevTools. Okay, so we'll come over here in the browser, we'll open this, we'll say right click, inspect. And you can see here, you'll see console and you can see this is a pop-up. I'll just zoom in. Can you see this? This is a pop-up, right? So this is how it would work. And I hope this has given you some good clarity as to how things are working. Okay. Now, if you here, they've purposely broken the code. Okay. So you can copy this. Okay. And let me break the code. I'll paste this. And if you save this, okay, if you save this and if you say reload, okay, it will reload and you can see there is an error that it has got, and you can see this error tab over here that has appeared. So you can click on errors and you will see this error over here. So you can debug things this way, right? So I hope these things are useful, and I hope this tutorial is actually helpful, or pretty straightforward and to the point. Okay, and yeah, they have also given you the structure of an extension project. So whenever you create a extension project, you need to have manifest.json in the root. Then this is how you can structure things. You can have pop-up related files in the pop-up folder, script related files in the script folder, images in the image folder. You have background.js which is a worker, service worker, and then you have a manifest.json, which is a manifest file, right? So this is a tentative structure that is being recommended by Chrome team for an extension project. Okay. So I hope this is useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along this simple tutorial of how you can build extensions with Google Chrome. So now what I've done is I have created a folder wherein I will be writing all the code that I'm going to need for my extension. And I've opened this folder in Visual Studio Code, right? You can make use of any sort of editor that enables you to do web development, but I love Visual Studio Code, so I'll be making use of that. It's quite popular, free as well, right? So here I've opened this. And here, first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a manifest file. So I'm going to say manifest.json over here. Okay. Now, what is a manifest file? It's like an instruction manual for your Chrome extension, and it tells the browser what your extension is, what it can do, and which file it is going to make use of. Okay. So first thing first, I'm going to make use of the name over here, and I'm going to say research assistant. So this is the name of our extension, and then I'm going to say, okay, so I am seeing an error over here. Okay, so this should be, there is a syntax error. This should be within a pair of curly braces, something like this. Okay, remember not to make any sort of syntax error over here, otherwise your extension won't work properly. And also one thing I forgot about is the manifest. Okay, manifest underscore version over here. Okay, and I'll say this is 3. Okay, so manifest version, and this should be in double quotes. All right, so this is done. I have name over here, and then I'll have version, and version can be 1.0. So I'll say 1.0 over here, and then I'll add the description. So what is the description? So description can be, what is this? This is an AI powered, okay, I can say AI powered research assistant. Okay, so there is a problem. This should be, and this will be research assistant, something like this. Okay, and then I can say permissions. So now what all permissions that our application needs. Okay, so I'll add a few permissions here. First is active tab. Okay, so this is basically the permission, or it lets our extension interact with the web page that the user is viewing, or that you are viewing whenever you are using the extension, right? Another one is going to be storage. This allows the extension to save or retrieve data. Okay, so I've made use of storage over here. Side panel over here. So this enables our extension to make use of a special side panel interface, which we are going to add, and I'm going to say scripting. So it gives the extension the ability to inject and run scripts in the web pages. Okay, so I've taken all these permissions. Now the next thing I'm going to add is action over here. Okay, now action will be, okay, so I'm going to say default title over here. Okay, and I'm going to say add the default title as research assistant. Okay, research assistant, something like this. Okay, now this is the default behavior for the extensions icon in the toolbar. Okay, and when you hover on the icon, it will show research assistant as the tooltip. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say side panel, something like this, side panel, like so. And here I'm going to say default, instead of default title, I'll say default path. What would be the default path? This will be side panel.html. Okay, so this is enabling me to set up a side panel, which is a secondary window that can slide in from the side. Okay, and when the side panel opens, it will load the side panel.html file, which we are going to define over here. Okay, in the folder. So whatever you define in this particular file will be loaded as the interface of the side panel. Okay, then what you have is you have background, something like this. Okay, now here we will have the background script. So I'll say service underscore worker, and I'm going to say background.js, something like this. So this runs in the background, handling tasks like listening to events and all of that if you wish to do in your extension. Okay, then I'm going to have host permission. So host underscore permissions, something like this. And here I'm going to add array, and I'm going to say I need permission to interact with localhost colon 8080 over here. Okay, slash star. So these are the web pages or the URLs that your extension is allowed to interact with. Okay, and I will also add any other site. Okay, now how would you add any other site? Oops. So you're going to say all underscore URLs, something like this. Okay, so this is what we are allowing the extension to interact with. Okay, it can interact with anything on localhost 8080 because this is where our APIs are hosted, and this is all URLs, so it can interact with any other URLs. Okay, now if you come over here, you can add content security underscore policy. Okay, so this is what we need to define, and here you will say extensions pages. Okay, so what I will do is here, this is a security setting that tells Chrome which sources our extension is allowed to load scripts and objects from. Okay, so that is what we are telling, and here we want to restrict the extension to load these only from its own files, and we'll be making use of self. Okay, so let me show over here. So I'm just going to add extension pages, and I'm going to say over here script -src. Okay, and within this I'm going to say self, and then I'm going to add a semicolon, and I'm going to say object -src, and I'm going to say self, something like this. Okay, so this is done. I believe this is what we need in the manifest file. Okay, now this manifest file is done. What we can do here is I'll create side panel.html. Now this is the HTML file that is going to have the definition of the side panel, and I'm going to have side panel.css. Let's have JS as well. So I'll have side panel.js as well. Okay, and one more file which we spoke about is background.js. Okay, so all these files are going to be there. Let us begin first with side panel. Okay, so this side panel is going to have the HTML over here. So I'm going to add an exclamation, and you can see the moment I add exclamation, it suggests me whether I want to add this boilerplate code, okay, on the pop-up. So you can either make use of this or this. I'll say this. Okay, this is taken care of. Now I don't need a few things over here. I don't need this meta tag, so I'll get rid of this. Instead I need title, so I'll say title as research assistant, something like this. And then over here I can say link. Okay, this is the link tag, and I'll say rel, I'll say style sheet. Okay, I am adding a style sheet over here. I'll say href, and this will be side panel.css. Okay, so this is done. Now within body, what I will do is I'll add a div over here. Okay, and within this div I'll say div like this. Okay, so this div can be class of container, something like this, and this can be class of header. Okay, so we can add a few classes. I can say h2 or h1 or h2. We'll say h2 over here. Okay, and I'll simply say search assistant, like so. Okay, I've added this. Okay, and this is done. Okay, now outside this div over here I'll add one more div. So I'll copy this, I'll add one more div. This will be actions, and here I can add a button. So I'll say button. Okay, something like this, and I'll say ID. What can be ID? Summarize button. Okay, and then you can have summarize button over here, something like this. Okay, copy this again, come over here like so, and add notes. Okay, so we'll be having the note taking ability, so I'll get rid of this, or we can have the button. We'll need button anyways. I'll add h3 tag. Okay, and I'll say research notes, something like this. Oops, research notes, and here after button you'll say text area. Okay, and within the text area you'll say IT as notes, like so, and you'll say placeholder. I'll say take notes here. Okay, let's make T capital so that it looks a bit decent. Okay, this is done. So the div is all set. Okay, this we need to change. We'll say save notes button, and here I'll say save notes, something like this. Okay, so we have summarize button and we have this research notes, and then we'll have one more div that we'll add. So I'll add div. We need to add a div to display the results as well, right? So I'll say ID as results, something like this. This is taken care of. Now outside this div, I'll say script, and I'll say src, and I'll say side panel.css. Sorry, not CSS, it will be JavaScript. So I'm loading JavaScript in the footer or in the end, basically, you can say, right? So this is side panel over here. Now we can come over here to CSS and we can add some sort of CSS over here. Okay. So for CSS, I'm going to start styling the body first. I'm going to add margin, and margin will be 0. And then I can add padding of 15 pixels, and font family. So what's the font family? I can select this one. Okay, this is taken care of. So font is done. I will add a container. Okay, so for container, I'll say display as that of flex, and flex direction as that of column, and I can say gap of 20 pixels. Okay, so 20 pixels, something like this. Then let's come to header. Header can be, we'll add simple things like padding bottom. Let's keep this to 10 pixels, and border bottom as that of 1 pixels, solid, and hashtag this. Okay, this is done. You can say dot header h2. Okay, so for this I'll say margin 0 pixels, and I'll say over here color as that of hash 1A73E8. Okay, so this is a color code that I had for sort of blue sort of a theme. You can add any sort of themes that you wish to have over here. Okay, I'll just be upfront on this. The reason is I'm choosing a blue theme, but if you want some other theme, you can happily go ahead with that color theme. Okay, so, or that color code. Okay, so here under actions, I'm going to say display as that of flex, and gap as that of 10 pixels, and flex wrap as that of wrap over here. Okay, this is taken care of. Now let us add some CSS to button over here. Now button is going to have a padding of 8 pixel and 16 pixels. Okay, this is what I'm defining. You can modify this. Okay, background color. Okay, so let us add background color of the same blue thing is what I'll add. I'll say color is white, and then I can say border is border is none over here, and let us see border radius. So border radius is that of 4 pixels, and cursor pointer, and then I think this is it. Yeah, and we can add the hover effect. Hover. Okay, so for hover, I'll say background color is that of so I have 1557B0. Okay, this is a little bit dark blue sort of a theme. Okay, so you can add that. Now we can add notes. For notes, text area, we can say here, I can say width. I'll add the height over here. Height can be 200 pixels. Okay, something like this. I'll say padding of 10 pixels. Oops. So something like this, and I can say border. Okay, So border is that of 1 pixels solid, and I can say a white sort of a color. And border radius, I'll stick to 4 pixels over here, and I'll say resize vertical. So we are allowing vertical resizing, and margin bottom as that of 10 pixels over here, like so. Okay, so this is taken care of. And now coming over to the results tab. Okay, now what does results look like? Okay, for results, I'll say padding of 10 pixels, then background color of we can add a white sort of color. Okay, F8, F9, F8. Okay, you can select white as well. Border radius is that of 4 pixels, and margin top I'll add of 20 pixels, so that there is some decent margin at the top. Okay, I think this is it. Let me save this. Let me come over here to HTML. So we have results. I've added things for results. Okay, this is taken care of. Now this is done. Okay, we have this entire CSS being set. Now what we need to do is we need to define JavaScript, right? And for JavaScript, we will be having the API calls and everything that we wish to do from our application. But before we go to define the side panel.js, what I would actually do is I would want to show the interface that we have built so far. Okay, and for that, what we need to do is we need to load the extension into the browser. So I'll come over here. Okay, and here under extensions, I'll go to manage extensions, and I'll say load unpacked, and I'll just select the extension that we have. Now I'll tell you, this extension won't work as expected. Okay, this I'm telling you ahead of time, and then we'll make a change and we'll get it working. So if you see this R over here, so I've pinned this extension first of all. Now if you see this R, this is of Research Assistant. So clicking on this, it's not opening the side panel right now. Why? Because we need to tell Chrome that whenever user clicks on the extensions toolbar icon or the action button, the extension side panel should open automatically. Okay, and for that, what we will do is we'll have to make a code change in background.js. Okay, I'll say chrome.sidepanel.setPanel behavior. Okay, just be sure not to make any sort of spelling mistakes. If you make any sort of spelling mistakes, it is not going to work. It should be as is. Open panel on action click, something like this, and you'll say true over here. Okay, save this, and then now let's remove the extension, and now let us try to load the extension from here. I'm going to reload the extension, and now if you come over here, okay, head over to Research Assistant, pin this, let us click on this. So you can see the side panel now. Okay, you can see the side panel. This is the exact CSS and the panel in the HTML that we have built. Well, nothing will happen if you click on summarize or notes over here. This is the result pane over here. You can see this gray sort of a patch. This is results. Okay, so if you come here, if you go to side panel CSS, you will see that for results we have given this background color. Okay, so it's not coming in right now. Okay, but it won't work. It's a static page right now, but this is how the extension would look like. Okay, now it's our time that will take this application further. Now let us take a step further, and what we would do is we would start adding some life to this side panel, and for that we would be adding some code into side panel.js. Okay, so first thing first, what we would do is when the document is loaded, okay, we would be doing some sort of housekeeping, like we would be adding a event listener over here. So there are two buttons, so we need event listener for these two. So we would be doing that, and then this notes thing, this notes, how we will be saving the notes. So we can save notes in the database, but we will be, since this is a browser based extension, we will be making use of browser's local storage to save the notes. Now, if the extension is loaded, or when the extension is loaded, if there are any sort of notes that have been saved locally, you should load them over here, right? So these three things, like loading the notes that have been saved already and adding a listener to both these things, we will be doing these when the document is loaded. So I'll come over here inside panel.js, and I'll say document over here, dot add event listener, and I'll first I'll say document content loaded. Okay, and I'll make use of an arrow function over here. Okay, so this will be a function, and here I'll start defining things. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is Chrome. I'll say Chrome dot storage dot local dot get, and I'll get research notes from here. Okay, so I'll get research. So whatever key you are using to save the notes, that is what you will be making use of to get the notes over here. Now, one thing is we have not saved any note yet, but this is the key that I'll be making use of to save the note. Okay, so that is exactly what I'm making use of. I'll say function. I'll get rid of the name. Okay, and here I'll say result, something like this, and I'll come over here. Okay, here I'll add a semicolon, and here I'm going to say if statement, if result, so I'll say if result dot research notes. Okay, so if this exists, then in that case you can say document dot get element by ID. And what is the ID of notes text area? So if you come over here, if you see this text area has the ID of notes. So I'll copy this, add this ID. So get this element, and to the value of this element, just assign result dot research notes, something like this. Okay, so this will be taken care of. Now, when the document loads, you are actually getting research notes from local storage, and you are adding it to this particular text area. That is what you're doing. Okay. Next thing, what you want to do is you should say document dot get element by ID, and you have a button. You have a button called summarize button. Okay, so you will say summarize button, something like this. Is this the right ID? Let me check. So this is the button. Just make sure that IDs are correct, because then if the IDs are incorrect, the button clicks won't work and you will wonder why it's not working. I'll say add event listener. Which event listener we are adding? Click. So this is what we will add. Click over here, and here I'll have to add a function. Now this function is not yet defined. Okay, I'll say summarize text, and I'll just copy this, and I'll come over here. Okay, I'll create an async function. So async arrow function. So not arrow function, I'll create a basic async function. I'll call it summarize text. Okay, and there is no parameter for this function. So I've added this function here. Okay, this is done, and I'll add one more listener. Right, we need one more. So I'll come over here, and here you will say so instead of summarize button, we need save notes button. Okay, so you come over here, take the ID save notes button, and here you can say save notes, something like this. Okay, this function does not exist. Okay, so just come over here, you can say async function save notes, and yeah, this is it. Okay, so this is done. We have both these things defined. Okay, if you want, you can add an alert over here, and you can check. Okay, this is summarize. Okay, something like this. So I won't do that. Okay, let us completely build the functionality. You can display the alert also on click for testing. You can do that, but I'm not doing that. I'm just saving this, and let us move to the next step. So now let us define this first function, which is summarize text. Now, what does this function do? Of course, but as the name says, it is going to summarize the text. Now, what text is it going to summarize? So if you come over here, okay, let us load any article over here. So I have opened this Spring Framework article from Spring Docs. Okay, now if the user says summarize, it won't summarize the entire page, but actually the user has to select something to summarize. So let's say I want this extension to summarize this particular thing. So I will select this particular thing, this much, and I'll hit summarize. Okay, so what this summarize function will do now is it has to get the selection first. So whatever user has selected over here in the browser, it has to get that selection, and then it has to send the selection to the API, which is the backend API, and then the response that it gets, it has to display this response over here, like in the results tab or the results place, result dev, I should say. Okay, so these tasks is what this extension is supposed to do. So to begin with, I'm going to start writing in the try catch block over here. Okay, this is done. And let's come inside try block. First thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take tab over here. Okay, and I'm going to say await dot, oh, sorry, not dot, I'm going to say Chrome dot tabs dot query. Okay, so I'm making use of this and I'm getting the active tabs of the user. Okay, so I'm saying active true over here, and I'm saying current window colon true, something like this. Okay, so first thing that I'm doing is I'm getting the user's active tab, whichever tabs user is working on. That is something that I'm getting with the help of this line of code. Okay, now after I get the active tab, I'm supposed to run a script in the active tab to get the selected text, because we need the selected text, because that is what we are going to summarize, right? So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to add result over here, something like this. Okay, and then I'm going to say await Chrome dot scripting dot execute script, something like this. And then over here, after I say execute script, here I'm going to say target. Okay, now for target I'm going to pass in tab ID over here. Oops, so I'm going to say tab ID. Okay, and I'm going to say tab dot ID, something like this. Okay, so we have this tab over here wherein we are getting the active tab and we are passing in the tab ID here. Okay, so this is the target, and after target I have one more key that I need to add. I need to add a function over here. So I'm going to say function colon. Okay, and here there will be a arrow function. Okay, so I'm going to say window dot get selection, and then I'll say to string, something like this. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do, and in the result, after doing this, in the result you will have the selected text. Okay, so first we are getting the active tab over here, whichever user is working on, and then from that tab we are getting the selected text. All right, so this is a way in which you can get the selected text. Then what we need to do is we'll add a validation. So I'll just add a simple validation wherein if there is no result, okay, I'll say I'll say please select some text first. Okay, now for that what I'm going to do is I will define a function here. Okay, so I'll get rid of this, and I'll say show result. So this is a function that will display anything that we pass. Okay, anything that we passed onto the results ID or the results div ID. That is how it's going to be. So here I'm going to say result not equal to show result, and I'll say you can pass in any sort of message. Okay, I'll say please select some text first. Okay, this is what I'm saying. All right, this is done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an API call. So validation is done, which means user has now selected some text. Okay, I'll add one more line over here, which is return. Okay, we need to return, and we should not proceed any further in the function. Okay, so this is done. Now here I'm going to say const response, and I'm going to say await fetch. Okay, so what do we fetch? Where do we make the call? So if you come over here, this is our endpoint, right? So I'll get this endpoint and I'll paste it over here. Okay, so I'm making use of the fetch API, which is an inbuilt API in the browsers, right? And I'm going to like pass in some data over here. Okay, so if I just zoom out, you can see here I'm passing in some additional information along with this. So I'm going to say method first of all. What is the method? Method will be post. So post over here in caps. Then I'll add a comma, headers. Now what is the header over here? So I'll add a header as, okay, so I'll say content type, content type over here, and I'll say colon, I can say application / JSON, something like this. Okay, this is done. And then you can have body over here, and in body you can say JSON.stringify, and I'll add this. I'll say content result and operation. So there are two things we need to pass in. First of all, one is the content, another one is the operation, right? So I'm saying in content, you will have the result, which is the selected text that we want to summarize. And in the operation, okay, we need to add the operation name. So operation name is summarize, something like this, right? So this is making sense now, and I'll add a semicolon in the end. Okay. Now we'll have the response. So I'm going to say if, okay, we can add one validation as well. If response is not equal to okay, response dot okay. Okay. If response is not okay, then we can say throw new error. We're going to throw an error object, and I'll just say API error. Okay, something like this, and I'll say over here $, okay, response dot status, something like this. Okay, so this is done now. Okay, and I'll say if there is no error, then I'll say text is equal to await response dot text, something like this, and then you can say show result. So pass in the result. I can say text dot replace, and now what are we going to replace? So we are going to replace the new line characters, which is backward slash. Okay, and I'll add these this way. Okay, this is the format over here. Okay, /g, comma, and I'll replace it with the line breaks for the HTML. So since we are in HTML, I'll replace it with this. Okay, and I'll add a semicolon over here. Semicolon will be here, like so. So this is done. Okay, here we are simply just replacing the /in character that we'll get in the response with BR for line breaks in HTML, right? And then now what we can do is here, if you get any sort of error, so we can add show result. So I'll add show result over here. Okay, and here I'm going to say error. Okay, so I'll say error like so, and here I'll say error dot message, something like this. Okay, so this is done. Now we can define show result first. Okay, so for show result, I'll say document dot get element by ID, and I'll say results over here dot inner HTML, something like this, is equal to, I'll add a backtick. Okay, so before adding backtick, let me create a div over here. Okay, so I'll add a div first of all. Oops. So I'll add a div, and here we'll say class. Oops. Class over here is equal to, okay, I'll say result item, and so we'll basically create a div. Okay, and within that we'll create another div. Okay, which will be result content. So I'll say div, which is result content class is equal to result content. Okay, and we'll display the content here, something like this. Okay, so this is done, and what I'll do is I will have to assign this inner HTML over here. So I'll take this everything in a single line, something like this, and I will add backticks to this entire thing, like so. Okay, backticks have been added. Okay, so I'll take this entire thing, cut it, or we don't need to cut even. Okay, I'll just do something like this. Okay, so this is done. Okay, and what we are doing is actually we are adding result two divs, like result item and result content, and we are adding the content here. Okay, this is done. Okay, now let us work on the save notes function. Save notes function should be relatively easy. So I'll say const notes is equal to document dot get element by ID. We'll get notes over here, notes dot value. Okay, so whatever is there in the text area, get that first. That is what this line says, and then you say Chrome dot storage dot local dot set. Okay, so we will have to set over here, and what are we setting? So we are setting research note, research notes, and then over here we will say notes, something like this. Okay, and here I'll add a function statement, and here you will see alert. Okay, and notes saved successfully, something like this. Okay, and save this. Okay, so this is done in my opinion. Okay, let us test this in the browser. So what I will do is we will reload the extension. So here I'll just hit reload, something like this. Come over here and just click on this button. Okay, now let us say summarize first. So you can see the text is summarized. You can see the API call was made and the text is summarized. You can see this. Okay, you can add some additional CSS to enhance this text that is being displayed. If you this is just if you wish to make it even more better. Okay, if you want to add some sort of basic CSS, you can definitely add it. Okay, you have seen like how we have added the CSS in the side panel.css. So you can see this is summarization of this. Okay, now let us say if I want to save something in the form of notes. So I'll just copy this. Okay, I'll add this and I'll say save notes. You can see notes saved successfully. Now if I close this and if I go to another tab, if I open this again, you will see this notes being visible there. Why? Because this is coming in from local storage. You can summarize even more. So if I select this entire thing, okay, until here, if I say summarize, okay, this is going to summarize this. You can see how it's summarizing. Now this summary is also dependent on the prompt that you have written. Okay, so let me also reiterate that you're working with an AI model. Okay, so here in the backend, whatever prompt you have set. So if you come over here, if you come to service, so here we are setting a prompt, right, for summarize. If you want the summary in bullets, so I'm saying summarize in few sentences. You can tweak this to give me 3 concise bullets summarizing the selection. So if you want a bullet wise summary, you can do that. You have to tweak it over here and you can rerun the application and then try it. Okay, so everything depends on the prompt. It's an AI model. Whatever you ask for it, it is going to give you that. Okay, so yeah, this is our application that is working absolutely okay. What I would do last is I would come to sidepanel.css and I just thought I'll just add, I'll say result item over here, and I'll say background over here. So background can be white, not wheat. It can be white over here. I can add a padding of 15 pixels. I can add a border radius of let's say 4 pixels, something like this. I can add a margin bottom of 10 pixels, and then I can add a box shadow. Oops, not box sizing. It's a box shadow of 0, 1 pixels, 3 pixels, and RGBA of 0, 0,0,0,0.1, something like this. Okay, so this is done, and then I can add some sort of styling for result content as well. Okay, so I can say result and content, and I can say margin bottom. So margin hyphen bottom, and I can say 10 pixels. Okay, and here I can say line height of 1.5. Okay, so this is done, and you can come over here and refresh the extension. Okay, now if you come here, you can select this and you can say summarize. You can see this is decent now. Okay, you can increase the font size if you wish to. Okay, but I'll stick to this. You're getting a decent summary. All right, so there is some sort of border and shadow effect and all that has been added. Okay, so yeah, this is about this extension. You can use this for a lot of things, like if you're doing some sort of research, you can improve on this. Okay, citations, you can include a button to add citations and all. So all of that you can do, but I've given you a good hand holding of how these kind of applications work and how you can build something on your own. I hope you enjoyed this.